Great. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to the special meeting on Wednesday, August 25th of the Historic Preservation and Cultural Resource Commission meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance conducted by Commissioner Urena.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Roll call. Chair Lubicic.
Present.
Vice Chair Moharo.
Present.
Commissioner DeBrent.
Present.
Commissioner Udena.
Present.
Commissioner Weeks.
Present.
Tonight's meeting is live streamed on cable channel 3 and our online platforms. Please email all public comments to hpcrc-publiccomment@sgch.org no later than the time the item is in front of the Historic Preservation and Cultural Resource Commission tonight. Comments received after items have been presented will not be read into the record. Comments will be read by Recording Secretary Erica Ortiz for up to 3 minutes each. To prevent any overlaps in comments, each commissioner will be called upon to speak. So that brings us to our first agenda item, which is the public comment. Secretary Ortiz, would you please give instructions for this?
This is the time set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Preservation and Cultural Resource Commission on items of interest that are not on the agenda, but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the commission cannot answer any questions or take any action until such time as the matter may appear as an item on a future agenda.
Thank you, Secretary Ortiz. Do we have any public comments?
No public comment, Chair.
All right, and with that, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the June 23rd, 2021 HPCRC meeting. I'm hoping that my fellow commissioners have had a chance to review the minutes, and if so, we can get a motion to recommend approval.
I motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Urena. Can I get a second?
Second.
I don't know who won that race. Close. Are there any comments? I'll go through a roll call. Commissioner DeBrent?
No comments on the.
Vice Chair Moharo?
Actually, I was missing from the previous meeting, the last meeting, and I don't have minutes in my binder. I went online and I'm not sure they were posted yet on the city site, so I have not seen them. But I can catch up. That's fine. I can get those maybe from Matt later. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Urena, any comments or changes for the minutes?
No, not at this time.
And Commissioner Weeks?
No comments on the past agenda.
All right, I don't have any changes or comments on the minutes. So could I get a vote for approval? We'll do a roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Commissioner DeBrent.
Approved.
Commissioner Udena.
Approved.
Commissioner Weeks.
Approved.
Vice Chair Moharo.
I believe the majority approved, so I don't have them to review, but I will say approved.
And Chair Lubicic.
I approve.
Motion passed. The vote is 5-0.
Thank you, everyone. That brings us to our third item, the introduction of our city preservation consultant.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. This is Samantha Tiwasart, Planning Manager with the Community Development Department. Item 3 is an introduction of the new city architect and architectural historian. Ron Nestor of WHA, along with his team members, are on the call this evening. And Ron will be introducing his team and providing more information about their firm and experiences, and to answer any questions from the commission. So with that, Ron, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you. First slide, please. So my name is Ron Nestor. I am a senior principal with the firm of William. You can hear me okay, right? Okay, I'm a senior principal with the firm of William Hajmahalch Architects, more easily known as WHA. We are a full-service architectural firm with 3 California offices. Our main office is in Newport Beach, where I am located. From Newport Beach, we do work across California and across the West, and indeed across the country and abroad as well. We do a wide variety of work, from institutional work, hospitality, office and commercial work, but the major focus of our work is in community planning and residential of what I call every flavor you can imagine: affordable, luxury, condos, apartments, every type. We also have an office in Los Angeles, which is oriented more in Long Beach, which is oriented toward the Los Angeles County projects. And we have an office in the Bay Area serving Northern California. Next slide. So this is me before my COVID beard. And I have more than 40 years of design experience, as I said, in many different project types, some of which include some of the largest projects in the West, like the MTA Tower at Union Station, Howard Hughes Center near LAX, the Water Garden. It's a 1.3 million square foot office project in Santa Monica, but I've been working in residential and community planning my entire career. I've also worked on more than 20 historic projects, many of them in the National Register Historic District of downtown Santa Ana and in Northern California. And my historic experience exceeds the Secretary of the Interior's professional qualification standards for architecture and historic architecture. So I'm very pleased to be joining the City of San Gabriel team with my team, which you'll see in just a moment. My responsibilities as acting city architect consultant include I will be the principal in charge for these endeavors, directing the various projects and activities of the team, involved in overall team management, but I'm also very carefully honed into specific reviews of architectural remodels and new projects proposed within the city. I also will be involved in historic reviews and in citywide strategies review. And let me introduce to you my associate, Julia Melisos, who will speak briefly about herself. Next slide.
Hello, good evening. I'm Julia. I'm also a principal at WHA. My expertise is in planning and community design. So I head up the studio that does all entitlement documents and design guidelines, specific plans. I also have a background in design, doing physical design. So it actually is a crossover and comprehensive understanding of the planning and development world. My day-to-day working with you guys and with the City of San Gabriel is really project managing, making sure that all the projects that come in, they go through me. I do a preliminary review. I measure them against the city's design guidelines, whether it's multifamily or the single family or whichever is most applicable to the project, and then distribute them both to Jen and Ron and manage and make sure that they're getting reviewed and getting them back to you guys in a timely fashion. So I'm the day-to-day project manager for you guys.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So I'm going to briefly show you a few projects that you may have interest in from the firm of WHA. Next slide. So I was the principal planner and architect of the Ambassador Gardens in Pasadena. Ambassador Gardens is an incredible, I call it a once in a career kind of project. It sits on a very large former estate of multimillionaire Hewlett Merritt, built at the turn of the last century, and included numerous mansions and historic gardens. After a long period of time, it became the home of Ambassador College for many years. The college moved out maybe 20 years ago, and the property was vacant for a number of years. A number of developers came through and they wanted to tear down all the mansions and build thousands of housing units, and thankfully the city stopped all of that. Our client came along, we were selected, and we carefully placed 70 very luxurious $2 million condominiums within the historic gardens and historic mansions. Each grouping of the new units would reflect its immediate historic context. Next slide. The project won the 2017 Pasadena Historic Preservation Award, and the State of California State Senate awarded me a special honor for my work in preserving Pasadena's rich historic character. So this is one example where we have taken Mr. Merritt's original reflecting pond and have turned that into the resort pool of the complex. And so all the perimeter planters and sculptures and pergolas have been restored to their original appearance, with new condominiums inserted into the project. Next slide. And this is another section of the property, parcel 16. This is on Del Mar Avenue. Across the street is a row of turn-of-the-century mansions, one of which is a green and green mansion. And so our project infills a blank spot on that street, and it appears to be 2 mansions, but in reality, it's 10 condominium units in a single building, although it looks like 2 buildings. There's a subterranean parking garage underneath that serves both of these buildings, and 10 units within. We worked with every department of the city and the city forester, the historic preservation department, the planning department, interested and very interested neighbors and preservation groups. And so we're very proud to be a part of that project. Next slide. And this is another one of my projects in Northern California. This is the Danville Hotel, which is that red building in the bottom of the slide, which is an 1893 hotel that was across the street from the original train depot. And this was the centerpiece of the town. There's also an adjacent house, the Macaulay House. The Macaulay family was the owners of and operators of the hotel. So over the years, the property, especially in the 1950s, had a major renovation of a fake kind of Knott's Berry Farm ghost town on the back of the property. By the time we were involved, that whole ghost town thing looked like a ghost town. It was completely dilapidated, falling apart. Buildings were falling down. So the client had hired us to design new mixed-use buildings of the, in keeping with the character of downtown Danville, which you can see in the upper slide. And my project was the rehabilitation and restoration of the original hotel and the Macaulay House, which the hotel now is a restaurant on the ground floor, 2 affordable apartments on the upper floor, and the house has been turned into a retail shop. So next slide. So recently, we were selected to be the architect of the Covina Bowl. The Covina Bowl is a 1950s Googie-style bowling alley that was the centerpiece of the city of Covina for decades. However, in 2017, the bowling alley went out of business and all the fixtures were removed, and it became just a derelict building, sometimes occupied by homeless people, setting fires and those kind of issues. So our client's true mark, before I do that, the Los Angeles Conservancy had declared it the most endangered building in the entire region, endangered of being torn down. It was listed then on the National Register. Our client, Truemark Homes, purchased the property, made an agreement with the city of Covina to tear down some of the later additions to the building and tear down the bowling lane hall of the building and preserve the front Googie-style main part of the building. And through this, we were introduced to our third partner in a third team member on this, Jen Milad. Jen had been selected to be the historic consultant and preservation consultant for the project. And we have worked very closely in tandem. We have an excellent relationship working together. And I'm going to advance the slide, and I'm going to allow Jen to introduce herself, and she may comment a little bit more on Covina as well. So next slide, please. Next slide.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, next slide. Thanks, Ron.
Next slide, please.
There I am. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Ron. And it's great to meet you all. We've been really looking forward to finally getting to meet the commissioners and be here with you tonight and to introduce ourselves. Thanks for that opportunity. I'm Jen Milad. I am a principal planner level and also a historian and architectural historian. My experience does exceed the Secretary of the Interior standards, as Ron's does, in the area of history and architectural history. And that's by way of my bachelor's and master's in history and historic preservation from UCR, as well as 20 years of experience in the field. So I have my own company, JMRC. I work regionally. I do live in Riverside, so a lot of my projects do end up being in Riverside, where I live and work mainly, but I work regionally. So I've had projects as far south as Temecula, no, that's not true, Encinitas, as far north as Camarillo, as far east as Blythe. And so I do get to interact with a lot of different cities, which I think gives me and the team a great perspective when we do join a city team like this in this capacity, because we bring a lot of experience from a lot of different cities to bear. So generally, I'm contracting with local, state, or federal agencies. Sometimes I'm contracting with developers, as in the case of the Covina Bowl. Sometimes I'm contracting with individual property owners or nonprofits like historic societies and different friends groups and things like that. Certainly rehabilitation and development projects do take up a bulk of my project calendar. So I'll be serving as needed on the project team, generally fielding all the projects that come along that are having to do with cultural resources or within a historic district or something like that. I'll also be helping out with the historic preservation program for this city, all the facets of that, whether it's the preservation ordinance, Mills Act, CLG status, things like that. And also make possibly some advanced planning items, when we have to consider historic preservation issues along with those. Ron did a good job on Covina Bowl, so I'll let that be. I have a lot of projects to present to you, so I'll skip to the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so you'll find me in libraries and archives, researching. I'll be in my office, a lot of city departments, presenting to commissions like yours, to city councils, planning commissions, but I'm also really a working architectural historian. And so I'm in the field a lot, which I love. My day can, be in the field in a hard hat to city council, in a business suit. So it's a varied work, and I love it. In the bottom left, I'm showing some folks from the city, the results of paint stripping. In the center photo, I'm actually heading an entire team, a multi-division, multi-department team of city employees in taking down a fallen pergola over the public right-of-way. And I'm sitting on one of the fallen concrete trunks there, actually doing the survey work on that. So I do get out in the field. This again just speaks to experience, because Ron is in the field as well. We know what some of the Secretary of these Interior standards really mean when we're applying them so directly. When we talk about gentleness means possible, like in the left photograph, I've got a lot of experience of actually applying some of the means and methods that we are often recommending. And so that really does help us make some germane recommendations. And next slide, please. Okay, well, I get to illustrate a lot of different types of projects, hopefully to give you an idea of the breadth of experience that I bring to the team. Ron didn't get a lot of time on this project, on this presentation, but I get to tell you a lot about mine, which is exciting for me. Next slide, please. Okay, Ron talked about, career projects, and this has to be one of mine. This is Homefront at Camp Anza. It's located in Riverside. This was a combination restoration and rehabilitation project. In Riverside, there was a World War II base called Camp Anza, and it was erected within 6 months in 1942. They started in May, and they had it done in December. So This is in the Arlanza community now of Riverside. We have only a handful of buildings that are left, besides barracks buildings, a handful of signature buildings left. And the top photo on the right shows the condition of the building when I literally drove up to it for the first time. And it was a sad thing to see. It was difficult to envision the potential here. What you can't see is what it looked like originally, but I did find an original photograph at the National Archives, which was very exciting. And we were able to take this, which was a officers club, back to a community center. We rehabilitated it, restored it into a community center, and built 30 bungalows around it for disabled veterans and their families. So the bottom picture shows how successful we were able to be with that. I was on the project team from conceptual planning to through construction phase and into the grand opening. One of the final things I got to do was to create a history space, like a small museum space inside. And that was a highlight for me as well at the grand opening, to see people go through and actually be able to view the artifacts that we found on site during the project. So this was a $14 million project. I did all the regulatory compliance, of course, and I guided the project team through construction with all kinds of unforeseen conditions as come up with historic preservation projects. So some of the highlights on this one, you'll see the original siding in the bottom picture. That was underneath the stucco. And of course, you know, the whole way through, you know, in this field, as I'm sure you know, we're always hearing, no, we can't do this, we can't do that. And so of course we were told the siding's not going to be under the stucco. And even if it is, it's going to be worthless. You can't restore it. Well, we did find it underneath the stucco. And that siding that you see in that entire picture on the bottom is all original. We did have some damage and we didn't have enough of it to side the entire huge building. But using the Secretary of the Interior standards, you know, to guide us, we did do a materials match. We had, you know, matching dimensional siding created, and we had a logical stopping point on the backside of that wing there, where we carried on with brand new, but in the same dimensions. We were able to restore the aqua media, which is that little pent roof over the first floor. That's a design that came out of World War II, actually specifically for wartime buildings constructed in the Pacific to shed water. And so that was a really unique design feature that had been sliced off with the alterations that you see in the top picture. All of the original windows were completely taken out. The new window openings were made in new locations. But we were really guided by physical clues. I do a lot of physical investigation and photo documentation, and we were able to put back the original windows in their original locations, wood frame windows. So I could go on and on. You can see the level of restoration we achieved here. This was a win for everybody. Everybody on the project loved it. The community loved it. We had no opposition to this project. It won multiple awards, and I'm very proud to say the Governor's Award for Historic Preservation in 2017, the California Conservation Foundation's Best Restoration Award in 2017, and many, many other awards related to planning and affordable housing as well. So next slide, please. This is 4th and Main in Santa Ana. This is the first American title building there. It's on Main Street between 4th and 5th. And then the top picture, you can see it once was Orange County Title Company. In the 1970s, a terrible facade improvement, in quotes, project happened, and they clad this entire building in this metal siding, metal vertical siding. They changed the entry treatment there to that triangular pediment capital here. And they took off I think they took it off and then like clad it with brick at the base of this building. So unfortunately, there's an unfortunate part to this, and that is the developer had really gone to the 11th hour on this project and going through the entitlement process. And no one seemed to know what was underneath the facade. So I'm not sure what studies were done and why it didn't come to light, but it didn't until the very last moment. In fact, I think it came to light during the city council meeting, which no developer wants to be dealing with. So I was actually brought in very, very late in the project. So I wasn't able to guide this into a better restoration solution. However, the city did engage me to investigate the feasibility of a preservation alternative that they dictated, and that was, can we retain some of the facade and the side elevation features and still construct the project? So I did a feasibility study along with, of course, a structural engineer and an architect, and determined that we could. So this is actually starting. We did get a little bit of a delay from COVID, but we are kicking off the project next week. And we did some investigative demolition, careful demolition, guided by me in the field to find the top right picture there. You can see all the concrete is still underneath. And so we will be carefully restoring that concrete. And of course, a new 7th-floor multifamily residential building with subgrade parking will be constructed as well, set back. It's something that I wish we could have designed a bit better, but at least we got to the table, even if we got there late, and we're able to guide it in the best way we can. Next project, please, or next slide, please. Marywood. This is in Orange, California. This is a beautiful location. If you're standing up here, you can see Disneyland, you can see Catalina, you can see Anaheim Stadium. It's a fantastic location. This was a project that was a demolition project and the construction of 40 hilltop homes, kind of the last hilltop in Orange County. The problem with this project or this property was that it was built on about 90 feet of unstable fill, and the project was literally sliding into the canyon. And over time, we had engineers tracking the process of this demolition happening before our eyes, and they were measuring the separation of bricks and the sliding of this into the canyon. This was owned by the Diocese of Orange. It was the diocesan seat. They had their retreat center here. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with it, but they did abandon this site when they bought the Crystal Cathedral. And so there was so much money would have had to go into preserving it, and no one was coming to the table to solve this this problem of the unstable fill. So this did go through a whole EIR process in the end. The property was constructed by the Sisters of Providence of St. Mary of the Woods. They're from Indiana. It was an all-girls Catholic boarding school. And it was designed by Vincent G. Rainey in, 1959 to 1964. And it's a remarkable example of new formalism with a hierarchical separation of spaces. We have these intersecting aspects of the campus here, from the quad to the gymnasium to the chapel to the dorms. Just stunning, really, a stunning achievement in modern architecture. Just the parabolic double arch there on the chapel is stunning. We really did hate to see this one go. It went through the full regulatory compliance. I completed all the studies. I did find it eligible for the National Register. And this is an example of when preservation, there is a path to demolition sometimes. It's a process, and it went through the entire process it was supposed to go. And there just was not a way to save this property, unfortunately. We did have a very, very heavy mitigation compliance component to this project, as you can imagine. And that included saving and re-erecting the concrete block walls. These were specially designed concrete block segments. We recreated those or reconstructed those. We saved the lotus flower relief panels. You can barely see those behind the bushes in the top left picture. The chapel, we literally took that apart brick by brick. We salvaged so many of the liturgical components and the features of that and got them to different churches in America and in Mexico. And we gave bricks away to alumni. The last graduating class, by the way, it was 1981. So, and on. We did large format photography, HABS level documentation, etc. So on. And I managed all of that as well. It also interestingly had a paleontological component. The canyon being on 90 feet of unstable fill had rich potential for paleontological resources. So I managed the monitoring effort on that. And we recovered 81 fossils from this location. through paleontological monitoring over 4 months. And those were accessioned at the Cooper Center in Santa Ana. So that was a successful conclusion to that project as well in that regard. Okay, next slide, please. This is the new main library in Riverside. This is a stunning, different postmodern design, a very high style example. It's actually constructed now. You're seeing the bottom picture was kind of mid-construction, and then this was a rendering on the top. I just went to the grand opening of this about a month ago. The community had mixed feelings about this. This was an empty site, so we didn't demolish anything to construct this, but it was in the middle of a historic district. So there was a lot of scrutiny on this. Of course, we went through the regulatory compliance necessary on this. This is a $40 million controversial project. No city wants to spend that much money for controversy, but Riverside did it. And in the end, the Cultural Heritage Board, which is Riverside's equivalent to your commission, did embrace this after 2 meetings and a lot of consideration. This historic district is a collection of high style examples. It's a very eclectic district. And so this fit right in a way because it was extremely high style and grand on a grand scale. And so there's a lot of different architectural styles in this district. And so it ultimately was embraced. And I think as it's been under construction and now we see the final conclusion, the community is more and more and more falling in love with it. So that's good. I'm ready to write the nomination for this. So in 50 years, it can be determined eligible because it's really a stunning piece of architecture. And next slide, please. Okay, so not everything I do is buildings and structures. A lot of my projects take me into the field to explore some very different types of cultural resources. So this is a lakeside project in Temazcal Valley. This project included a lot of different components. It included a lake, a dam, a spillway. We had road segments. We had prehistoric resources. We had just about everything you can think of except buildings. So this was very different and a fantastic project. Of course, this was, I haven't been mentioning it, but most of my projects are CEQA projects, and some of them include Section 106. This one included both. And so this project spanned, prehistoric era, the Spanish and Mexican eras in historic development, and current historic era, because as you can see in the top left, we have a petroglyph there. We had many historic or prehistoric artifacts, including milling slicks and lithic scatters. We had a circle of stones. There's so much that we had here. And then we also had use of this area in the Mexican and Spanish time. The lake itself was a lake that was used during those eras. It was called La Lagunita, and it's now Corona Lake, if you know that area. We also, of course, had the Butterfield Stage Route here. Temazcal Canyon Road coincides with the Butterfield Stage Route. So, and then in modern historic times, we had an entire subgrade water distribution system that fed the new city of Corona. It actually was what was able to allow Corona to be founded and to survive and succeed in the early days. So this is really multi-layered. We definitely had a cultural landscape going on here. And ultimately we had 9 resources found eligible for the National and California registers. So that was quite a lot to come out of this project. Next slide, please. Great, this is Boomin Ranch in Encinitas. I told you I'd get around, so now I'm down south in Encinitas. This is actually an old homestead ranch. This was founded in 1886 by Herman Boomin. And he was just one of many settlers that came out west and founded the Olivenhain colony, a German settlement there in Encinitas area. This ranch really does embody the farthest reaches of manifest destiny, as it was enacted in the Homestead Act of 1862. And it's actually a functioning ranch still today. And Richard Boomin and his wife still run the ranch. It was originally a 160-acre homestead. It's now 10 acres, but every year I still get emails from Richard and Twink Boomin, and they're telling me how the pond is bigger this year, and they're harvesting the wheat in this field, and they're just amazing. What you see in the bottom picture is a bee apiary in the foreground with the fence. Beyond are several barns. Far in the background is the second house that was on the property. The first one was demolished way back when. But that shanty in the top left, that's 1886 shanty, a homestead shanty, and it's still there. It was actually constructed of reclaimed lumber. They literally took apart some other building several miles away and brought it here and constructed that. It's literally one room. And if you ever go here, they do tours. So look it up if you're ever in the area. It's a great tour. It's like going to a living museum because all of the farm implements are all still there in all the buildings. Richard will explain to you exactly how honey is extracted and everything. It's amazing. So I hope they're going to go to the next step, which is trying to get this site on the state park system. So we talked about that, and I really do hope they're able to get to that part. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is the Mission Inn in Riverside. It's one of the largest historic preservation clients in the city, and I think that probably might resonate with you, having that beautiful Mission St. Gabriel in your own neighborhood. Of course, this isn't actually a mission, but a lot of historic preservation projects are centered around the Mission Inn in Riverside. Of course, you probably know the Mission Inn. It's a national landmark. It's definitely Riverside's most prestigious project. It's listed in the National Register. So they bring a lot of projects. One of the controversial projects that came at the Mission Inn was the enclosure of this pergola. I'm sorry that I don't have a before picture for you, but so both the top and the bottom pictures are showing the after picture. But city staff, I was on contract staff for the city of Riverside for 3 years, and we worked really hard with the applicant to come up with a design that would actually work. Because enclosing a pergola is a no-no in historic preservation. We never do it. I never recommend it, and it's something that just isn't done. But we actually found a way to do it here. They have a restaurant here, an Italian restaurant called La Trattoria, and it was struggling because of weather, and they weren't able to serve enough people, and the weather kept them from operating. And if you see in the bottom pictures a little bit more clear, we were able to design a really, really clear, like wide, large panes. I think part of the reason this was so successful is because of the arched panes that went around the rim of the arch, still mimicking the line of that. The mullions there were very small as we could get them. And I think, and of course it's reversible. I think in terms of Secretary of the Interior standards, I think this one is one of the only projects I've seen that has achieved compliance with the standards in enclosing a pergola. So I've stopped saying never on that one, because I know it can be done if only we take our time and do it right. So that's one good example there. And the next slide, please. This is the Prado Dam Bicentennial Mural. So if you've ever been on the 91 freeway headed east towards Riverside, you'll have seen this mural. It says 200 years of freedom, 1776 to 1976. And I grew up looking at this mural as we would drive into Corona for dinner with the family from the back seat. So the Army Corps of Engineers has done many studies that have determined they need to raise the spillway to ensure safety for downriver residents in the future. So the proposal is to raise the spillway. And so it comes into question this mural. You probably don't know a lot about the mural if you've seen it. You just know it's there and you know it represents the bicentennial. But I can tell you that the bicentennial was really a nationwide event that came to fruition over the course of about 10 years. And it was a call to all Americans across the country to come up with something to do in their own communities. And so all across the country, people built monuments. They started libraries. They held fairs and they did parades. And in Corona, the Corona High School students came up with this idea to paint the spillway. And it wasn't the first time they painted the spillway. Underneath, which nobody knows, underneath the mural has messaging from the graduating classes of many, many years. So it's got stuff like 72 rules and 69 something or other, there's all kinds of messages under there. And so in 1976, the students decided they would paint the dam spillway for the very last time. And the students came up with this design, and over the course of a few weekends, the students and their parents painted the spillway. And that's the second set of pictures that you see there with where the folks are out with their buckets and their rollers. So, this one has really been sort of demolition by neglect. Really, it's unfair to say that, maybe even because it's really painted on a 40-degree sloped surface. It's out in the blazing sun and the rain. But it has been a bit neglected over the years. And also it was the target of graffiti. So in the third picture, you can see that 200 years of freedom. And then you can see that the numbers are covered in tops and some other messaging. And that's graffiti. Unfortunately, it's covered up much of the message, but with some computer simulation, we have realized like how we can achieve uncovering it again. We also did some paint analysis, and that's what you see there, the lead-based paint being analyzed, how much is lead, that's a big concern, and how does it need to be remediated. And the bottom picture actually shows it very clearly after it was painted, and that's what it looks like, what it looked like originally, and for many, many years, decades, really. So I actually did a peer review of the Section 106 study that was done by the Army Corps of Engineer. Unfortunately, I think it was a misguided study. The study found that the bicentennial was not a significant event in American history. And so my peer review went into sort of a deep dive into that topic. And that went all the way to the keeper of the National Register who agreed with me. And so while the final outcome of this mural is right now still unknown because it's definitely under litigation. And we're hoping to restore it or repaint it. The actual original designers are both still alive and involved in the project. But the big win here is the clear direction from the keeper of the National Register that the bicentennial was a significant event. And so from here on out, any property that has an association with the bicentennial will already have that finding at least, and then it'll be just a measure of determining strength of association and integrity for properties that have that bicentennial association. So that was a big win. All right, and next slide, please. And I think this is my last, well, maybe my last project. This is Mission Heritage Plaza Inn Riverside. You can see in the top picture, there's a roughly turn of the century, probably like a 4-square house buried within a commercial building. And so that was what was on the lot when the project was proposed. Clearly that house no longer has any integrity. It's been significantly altered and enveloped by the commercial construction. So that was demolished, and Mission Heritage is actually under construction right now. It's about a block or so from my office building. And this is a mixed-use project that includes 71 affordable housing units, new offices for the Fair Housing Council. The Fair Housing Council is what occupied that commercial building in the top picture. And but part of the project is really exciting because we're constructing the first Civil Rights Institute of inland Southern California. I think there's 2 Civil Rights Institutes in the state, and this will be one of them, but it's the first one in Southern California or in our area. So that's an exciting prospect. It's a community partnership with our African American Historical Society and other groups, and we will have some display space. It'll be able to be used for educational exhibits, field trips, and the like right here in downtown Riverside. In fact, this is actually right across the street from that new main library, so you can overlook this as well as the Fox Theater from that fantastic Rampart Arch window. And next slide, please. Oh, okay, this is my last one. So I'm not sure, you may have seen me on TV. I'm actually a historic consultant for the Restored Show. I do all I scout the properties. I do all the historic reports on all the project houses, and I'm an on-film historian as well. If you've ever seen the show, you'll recognize Brett with the hat. His thing, and so unfortunately I'm not able to guide a lot of what they do on the show too much, because a lot of it is driven by budget that the homeowners have and what they want to accomplish. But Brett is pretty committed to restoration work, and so he does a pretty good job with balancing restoration and new modern improvements. So that's a really fun thing. We just finished, I think our season 6 is on air right now, and we are waiting to hear if we have a season 7. And I have actually been on the show since season 1. I can't believe that all this time has passed. So it's a really fun part of my work. And honestly, if I could get paid enough, that's all I would do. It's so much fun. That's about it. So let me go to the next slide. I think that's our ending slide.
That's right. Well, on behalf of Jen and Julia and myself, we'd like to thank the commissioners for allowing us to introduce our team to your team. And we're very excited about working with the city. We've already been working on many, many review projects in the city, and more every day, it seems. And so it's exciting that things are happening in the city, and we welcome any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you so much, Ron, Julia, and Jen. That was really impressive to see the breadth and depth of all that you do. I'll turn to my fellow commissioners and just go again in order to see if you have any questions or comments. Commissioner DeVrent.
Yeah, my only question is, this is just from my knowledge, is how are your services engaged by the city? Are you engaged with certain projects that were probably in motion or moving that, but as you go through, how does your consultant contract work with the city?
Well, there's sort of two halves to the consultancy. One half is we're on an annual retainer for a 3-year period. The retainer covers meetings such as this. The other half of the assignment is for individual project reviews, which are done individually, and the applicant pays the city a number of fees, but part of the fees go toward our review time. Did that answer the question?
Not sure if we've lost Commissioner DeVrent's sound.
Yes, it did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Maharo.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ron, Jan, and Julia. I love the enthusiasm. I see so many of your projects that parallel what's going on in our city. I'm excited that you're on. Welcome you, and I hope that we as a commission can work closely with you, because there is so much ahead. There's so much, and I invite you. I'm sure you've been to the city, you've seen, drive the neighborhoods, the commercial areas. It's a lovely city with a lot of history that definitely deserves preservation and definitely needs to tell its story. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Urena, any questions or comments?
No questions. I just applaud them for being on board and to touch on some of the other commissioners. I mean, we do have a beautiful city here, and I would love nothing more to upkeep as much as possible and preserve what we have. So, my 8-year-old son can enjoy as much as I've enjoyed in, 20, 30 years from now.
Thank you. Not only to preserve what you have, is to improve what is being proposed also.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
And Commissioner Weeks.
No questions, but I do want to applaud the presentation and the description of your work and how it fits into our goals here as a historical preservation group. Personally, I'm an architect as well, but I'm not into the historical aspect of it as much as your firm. And it's really, really comforting to see the level of detail and depth that you get into your projects and the level of research that goes into it that I never see on a mixed-use residential project. So, very impressed and welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I just want to echo our gratitude that you came and gave us such a detailed presentation. It really did answer a lot of the questions that I had, knowing some of the issues that we're going to be facing and have faced in San Gabriel. I'd like to piggyback, if I may, on a question the Commissioner DeVrent asked just about the process. My sense from your introductions is, Julia, that perhaps you're the first set of eyes on projects that come through, and then
Exactly. Yeah.
okay, and as you evaluate the project, you bring in Ron and Jen as necessary.
Yeah, it's pretty instantaneous. So I take in the project, I kind of do the beginning paperwork just to save some time. And then I review it against the guidelines since my expertise is working, creating guidelines, reviewing guidelines, all of that type of thing. And then I pass it on to Ron and Jen. And then, depending, Jen will step in when it's applicable. And then Ron does his full review, provides graphics, drawings, whatever comment help guide the applicant in their proposal.
Thank you so much.
Deeper, and then it goes. Yeah.
And yeah, if I can jump in and answer a bit too, what we found, we probably expected that Julia would pass it one way or the other to Ron or me, but really quickly we found that it was probably best for her to pass just to both of us so that I can just take a quick look, without, as we don't have yet a citywide survey, it's kind of my eyes on it to go, okay, I think this could be in a, we've done our context at work, and now I think this could be in a potential area. Let's be a little sensitive here to the approach to this project, or I'll bring some things to their attention, and if I look at it and I see, okay, there's nothing to worry about here, I'll just say real quickly, no concerns here in terms of preservation, that type of thing. So for sure, nothing is getting missed, just to convey that.
And while I do have a good deal of background in historic work, Jen is the expert on so many different levels. So I'm really glad that we have teamed up together on this project.
I'm as impressed with Ron as he is with me.
I can see that from the presentation, that there's a terrific amount of talent that the three of you are bringing. And I'm grateful to hear that clarification. I think my concern as chair is what you said, Jen, that we are still finalizing our historic context statement. We have yet to still do a survey. We're a very built out city, so most projects are infill. We're demolishing and rebuilding, and so context matters very much, and respecting massing and scale and the character of the neighborhoods is something that's a primary concern. So I'm grateful to have 6 eyes right now on the project they go through. If there are not any further questions from my fellow commissioners, again, just a hearty thank you for your time and thoughtful presentation.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be part of your city.
Well, we're looking forward to working closely with you.
Right, at this time, Julia and I are dropping off, and Jen is going to continue, and she'll report back if we need more information from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good evening. That will bring us to the 4th item on our agenda. This is 320 South Mission Drive, the San Gabriel Mission Playhouse. This is an initial review for historic appropriateness to the register status, and the applicant is the City of San Gabriel.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Item 4 is a continuation of ongoing discussions on the proposed Mission Playhouse exterior painting restoration project. Can we go to slide 2, please? The Mission Playhouse, again, is located at 320 South Mission Drive. It's on the east side of Mission, between Santa Anita Street to the south and Broadway to the north. Next slide, please. And this is an aerial view of the Mission Playhouse with the building situated at the southern tip of the lot and the public parking located north of the building. Next slide. So a quick background. The Playhouse, again, was constructed between 1921 and 1927. In 2018, the City Council approved the Mission Playhouse to be painted the off-white color that it currently has. In what was considered the first phase of a multi-phase exterior restoration project. And then in July of 2019, the Mission Playhouse was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. And then on October of 2019, the commission was presented with some painting options for the accent details on the Mission Playhouse. Including the proposed accent glazing and striping and painting of text, also adding some tile and mass details to the recess areas of the upper center arch, also painting the rosettes on the two sides of the arch and also painting the underside of the three upper vaults. On November of 2020, the commission agreed to move forward with a paint analysis and to provide strike-offs. And the paint analysis has been completed, and the results are provided to the commission this evening for review and comments. So if we can go to the next slide. And slide 5, again, shows the building as it currently exists with the off-white paint. If we can go to slide 6. And slide 6 shows the original proposed scope back in 2019, which shows some of the proposed work that was just summarized. Can we go to the next slide, please? And this slide shows the proposed paint analysis, just a couple of examples of the analysis that was done, and then also some of the strike-off results. And the paint analysis on the different architectural details on the Playhouse have been provided to the commission as part of attachment A. It does include analysis for the wrought iron accents, the windows, the vaulted portico, and then also the front crest. If we can go to slide 8. The city's architectural historian, Jen, has reviewed the memorandum and report provided by Legrand Studios, Inc., which again is included with the staff report, and deemed the memorandum and report to be consistent with the city's codes for registered properties, consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards, and agrees with the findings provided in the recommendations. If we can go to slide 9. And the proposed project is exempt from the Environmental Quality Act per Guideline Section 15331, Class 31, which applies to projects limited to maintenance, repair, stabilization, rehabilitation, restoration, conservation, or reconstruction of historical resources in a manner consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards. If we can go to the next slide, please. And so with that, staff is recommending that the commission provide comments on the results and recommendations. This concludes staff's presentation, but also on the call this evening, in addition to Jen, is Rebecca Perez, the city's Community Services Director, as well as Mission Playhouse Director. So both are available for questions, and this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'll turn to my fellow commissioners for questions. Commissioner DeVrent, do you have any questions for either Rebecca, Jen, or Sam?
Can everybody hear me now? I think I cleared up my audio issue.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I don't really have any questions. I kind of went on a little scavenger hunt this weekend to kind of go and look. a visual person, and the fact that I kind of have to see where these things lie and, you know, in place so I can see where they are and everything else. So I kind of had a little bit of fun this weekend matching these up and finding the sections that they were at. A little bit of a scavenger hunt, Easter egg hunt, I guess. And I think my only comment is that, you know, the next stage of this is where it's going to go. Is there a possibility to meet with La Grande Studios and have them do a walkthrough with any of the commissioners and the city who wants to go through this before they begin the process, to get kind of an idea of what the final thought is and what they're going to do? I mean, I personally thought I thought the most interesting part was the wrought iron having the original like rust treatment, you know, to it. And I saw that exposed there. And I think even though it doesn't feel like that would be a traditional way to go, because we're so used to seeing that wrought iron painted black, or it is black and naturally, you know, this would be a really great accent point for it. I was really kind of excited about that, and really excited about the original colors that they did uncover there. I really think that would make that the Playhouse a really great center point to the city. It already is, but to have just these vibrant accent colors that are, from what I'm reading in this report, historical and original, I think would be really, really great. And that would be the direction I would like to see it go. But I would love to have a walkthrough with somebody, who did this analysis and everything else like that at some point, just to kind of see what they were thinking too.
Rebecca, if I can defer that question to you.
Sure. Yes, I think that definitely would be appropriate, and would be we would welcome that opportunity to work with the commission to do a walkthrough with that. We would want to have Evan, who had done the work on the color analysis, I think, be a part of that. So we would just need to arrange scheduling, but I think that would be appropriate. And Jen has also we had an opportunity to have a meeting with Jen and Evan. So I think that would be important to have Jen as part of that meeting, as well as community development staff. So we'd welcome that.
Thank you. Vice Chair Maharo, any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. I actually share Commissioner Durant's sentiments. I would love a walkthrough as well. I'm trying to remember what the times I've been there, looking at so much detail because it's such a gorgeous building. What's currently in the entry vaulted ceilings? They want to go back to the original colors, but what's there now? I'm trying to remember what's there now, and I couldn't really recall.
This is Rebecca. You're talking about the portico area?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So there is currently quite a bit of detail there. I think the color difference is what Evan found with that. So there is a lot of detail there currently, though.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Urena.
Yeah, no real comments. I just share the same as everybody else, trying to get a more firsthand look of a lot of this. I'm just in awe of the amount of work that was put into this to restore something that like is such a center point. I mean, I've been there numerous times, and now I feel like maybe I didn't pay enough attention. I should have paid more attention with some of these subtleties, you know?
It's always fun to go back and rediscover.
Yes.
All right, and Commissioner Weeks.
Well, I'm really excited that they were able to get the paint analysis done, and they have a palette now of what those original colors were. Just kind of dying to see them applied. I don't know once they get the go-ahead if it's possible to have some sort of an in-place mock-up of a small area so we can at least see how they look. with the overall composition and the overall massing of everything. I'm sure there's not going to be much of a problem, but it would be really nice to see some of those colors in place before we go full out and cover the entire exterior. But otherwise, it's exciting, very exciting.
Thank you, Commissioner Weeks. I do have a couple questions. I love that Commissioner DeVrent described it as being a scavenger hunt. I went down with my husband and we had the report and we're walking around trying to figure out where the tests had been done. And our first thought was, when this restoration is complete, the Playhouse is definitely going to pop. The colors are so vibrant compared to what we are used to seeing. So I had a couple questions about the doors that are in the portico in the main entry. In the test, it looked as though there were two tones, a red, a more true red, and then an orange. And I just wanted to understand that the striping that you're seeing around the door is actually the orange, and it's not a two-tone stripe that goes around the door. And I'm only asking that because the chevrons that line the vaults of the portico do have a two-tone component.
Jennifer, if you can help to answer that question.
Sure, I can. Sure. My recollection in reading the report, and I'm looking at it now as well, just to refresh my memory. But my recollection is that it is not a two-tone stripe, but a single color. I don't know if you found something different in the field, but I haven't done the scavenger hunt myself, so I can't wait to do that. But yeah, so I think it is one. And on the doors, my recommendation, that might be the last piece to sort of fall into place here, because I don't think we should be really addressing the paint on the doors so much until we figure out what's going on with the doors, because there are some possibly structural issues. But so we have some time on those, but yeah, I do think it is one accent color.
I absolutely agree with your assessment on the doors. I do think there are some important structural issues to address. And I was thinking that if it was actually a two-tone stripe around the door, that would really be something that was popping. So I was hoping it's just orange. Sort of that
I
orange
think it's one, but we might find differently once we're in the field and really looking at that.
So. And then I was curious really about the crest, just that it seems that there have been layers of colors applied to the crest on the front, that the first test is revealing something that probably is not true to the period of construction. But do we have a sense, does the crest appear? That was certainly one place I couldn't get to in my scavenger hunt. But is it as bright as the colors that we're seeing on the rest of the structure?
So what we see with the crest, if I can jump in here on the answer, Evan described it. Unfortunately, he's not on the call, but in our meeting, Evan described that their assessment is that they don't believe the crest was painted originally, which is surprising. I'm surprised that the original designer wouldn't have taken the opportunity to highlight that beautiful crest. But be that as it may, the analysis has come. The results of the analysis have come out that way. So they did reveal some different colors, but they think there was white underneath originally. And what they did uncover isn't very in keeping with the period. It doesn't seem to be quite appropriate. So the theory is that this was probably a later, not necessarily very late, but definitely not original, but a later attempt to add some color to this crest, and possibly not done very well. So I hate to malign the unknown artist that came up with the colors. But so I do think this may be a good opportunity for some creativity here by a modern craftsman to come up with some sort of period appropriate polychromatic scheme where we can really highlight that crest really well. Possibly it was an original intention to highlight the crest and it just didn't happen. But certainly a polychromatic design would be very appropriate. So I think, I'm not sure if Evan's come up with anything like that yet, Rebecca, but I'd be looking to him to come up with some sort of polychromatic design for our review and direction.
And just to address that, I think we were waiting on the commission's discussion tonight before any of that analysis was happening. But
Excellent.
Thank you for that, Jen.
I think before we malign an artist, we could also blame a diminishing budget, knowing the history of the construction of the Playhouse. They were scrambling at the end, and it may have just been a quick white paint to get it open.
Yeah.
So is this, in terms of the analysis and proposals, it would be in the crest is where we're switching from restoration to rehabilitation.
Yep,
In terms of,
exactly.
all right. Well, thank you so much. Let's see, I suppose we go on to public comment on this item. So if there are any public comments, please email them to hpcrc-publiccomment@sgch.org. And Secretary Ortiz, have we received any comments on this item?
No public comment for this item, Chair.
All right. So with that, I will close public comment at 7:40. Are there any additional comments from my fellow commissioners?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had one question I forgot to ask. The San Gabriel lettering that would probably, so my understanding that that's not original, that would be something that would be added, that's potentially to be added now?
Not sure if you want me to jump in, Sam.
Yes, please.
I can jump in. I think this is Rebecca. I think that the design that you were seeing there was not the design that was being proposed. That was the design that you saw earlier was the design that had been proposed previously that was kind of concurrent with the historic nomination, or the nomination to the historic, sorry, I can't say that. And so I don't think that design is being proposed tonight. Actually, we're coming back. That's when the color analysis was done, and we would be proposing a revised, more in line with the Secretary of the Interior standards design for the painting.
Any
Thank you.
questions? All right, with that, thank you very much, Rebecca and Jen and Sam, for that report. We look forward to seeing how this develops. It looks like we have some fundraising ahead of us. All right, so that will take us to the fifth item on our agenda, which is the draft historic context statement.
Thank you, Chair Lubicic and members of the commission. The item before you tonight is a draft historical context statement. And this project has been going on since last September, and throughout the 3 historical preservation commissions and 1 community meetings and several individual stakeholder meetings. And our consultant ARG has done a fabulous job preparing kind of public outreach, contact individual community stakeholders, and drive around the city and prepare a draft context statement for your review. And now we're getting getting closer to a final step of the project, which is for commission to review, looking at the draft context statement and kind of recommending city council to kind of adapt the draft context statement so we can bring this item to city council to formalize, to have kind of formal St. Gabriel historical context statement with us. And I will turn to our consultant Andrew from ARG to walk us through the changes that when we last brought to this commission back in June, and the future next step, whether it be the council meeting, also if the council adopt this context statement, what the next step should be based on our consultant's recommendations. So Andrew.
Thank you, Matt. I believe we have just a brief slide presentation to show you all. There it is. All right, so good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time, as always. My name is Andrew Goodrich. I'm here representing Architectural Resources Group, or ARG. We are really pleased to be here tonight to talk to you all about the revised draft of the historic context statement. I'm going to do my best to keep my presentation relatively brief. Matt's report and presentation, he does a really great job at breaking things down, and I don't want to repeat too much of what's already been noted. So I'll begin just by providing a quick update on what's been done since our last meeting with you all back in June, and then talk a bit about next steps and recommendations. And then, of course, at the end, we'd love to hear your feedback and answer any questions that you may have. Next slide, please. So with all that said, we'll start by providing a quick update on what our team has been working on since June. Next slide, please. So as you all know, we've been working on this for a while now. The project began last September. An initial draft of the historic context statement was circulated a couple of months ago at the beginning of June. About 2 months ago, on June 23rd, we met with this commission to present the initial draft and solicit feedback and recommendations. We received comments and suggestions from you all and also from staff, and we wanted to thank everyone for really taking the time to read through the document carefully and provide us with some really helpful suggestions and guidance. I know it's a lot of pages to read through, so we really appreciate everyone's time. So since that meeting in July and early August, our team at ARG has been working on revising the draft historic context statement to account for the feedback that was received. I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of what we've been doing in just a few minutes. And then on August 13th, so a couple of weeks ago, a revised draft of the historic context statement was posted on the project website. When it was published, we reached out directly to stakeholders via email, letting them know that the revised draft was available online for review and comment. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I wanted to speak just a little bit more about some of the specific revisions that were made to the document, just so that you all have a sense of kind of what has changed between the draft that you initially reviewed in June and the draft that's before you today. So I think first and foremost, we heard from a lot of folks that they'd like to see a stronger acknowledgement of prehistory and the contributions of indigenous Californians prior to 1775. So we made a point to do that. So you'll see in this draft that we expanded the first section of the document. Initially, it was a pretty brief and expository discussion about the early history of San Gabriel into a full-fledged context that includes a much more robust narrative and images in addition to eligibility standards. So that context is called San Gabriel pre-1775, and that brings the total number of contexts in the document from 6 to 7. We also consulted additional source materials that were recommended to us. These additional sources really helped enhance the narrative and really helped us flesh out some of the key ideas that are conveyed throughout the document. There's a number of sources that were added. These are noted both in the footnotes throughout the document as well as in the bibliography. Two that were especially helpful to us, and I wanted to just call out real quickly, were first was William Deverell's Whitewashed Adobe. Second was Wendy Chang's Landscapes of Beauty and Plunder. Both of these sources contain a lot of really valuable information that when we dove into them, they're really applicable to the history and the dynamics of San Gabriel. So those were two especially helpful sources, but we did include a number of recommended sources. In addition, we did our best to include more images and better images to the document. So this includes historic photos and current photos, as well as maps and other graphics. We're hoping that this helps to better illustrate some of the key ideas that are conveyed throughout the document. We're also hoping that it makes the document maybe a bit more user-friendly and approachable by breaking up some of the sections that were a bit text-heavy before. So another change that was made is we talk about kind of, there was discussion about, I'm going to borrow your phrase from the previous presentation, the scavenger hunt or Easter egg hunt. We wanted to be more clear about where particular properties are located within the city geographically when they are called out in the narrative. So we did our best to do this. It's a little tricky in a document like this to always make that happen, but we really did try. And we did this in a couple of ways. So when a specific property was called out, oftentimes we could be more descriptive in our narrative about where in the city, even if it's generally speaking, like where in the city it's located. So we did that. And then we also found that incorporating additional images and maps and graphics was also helpful in this sense. And then finally, we gave everything a very thorough copy edit. So we went through really with our red pen, line by line. We found you know, a few typos here and there, so we corrected those. We also did some wordsmithing in sections, nothing too substantial, but just really to improve the overall flow and readability of the document. So hopefully we were able to adequately address everybody's feedback. Again, we really appreciate everybody taking the time to really read through this carefully and provide us with some really useful guidance. There is one loose end that we're currently working on tying up. So I did want to just mention that real quickly. At our last meeting with you all in June, we discussed the possibility of incorporating some of the really great historic photos that Rick Arnold has in his collection. So our team will be in touch with Rick, and we'll see what we can do to make this happen. This won't result in any really dramatic changes to the document as it stands now. It will largely be taking existing historic photos and either augmenting them with additional historic photos or replacing them with ones from Rick's collection that are maybe a bit higher quality or higher resolution. Next slide, please. So this graphic here just shows where we are in the process. We've included this with all our presentations to you. It's kind of fun to see that red arrow at the bottom right of the screen now it's been moving further and further right. So it is pretty hard to believe, but as you can see here, we're very quickly approaching the finish line. The red arrow at the far right end of the slide indicates where we are, which is very close to the finish line. The target completion date is fall of 2021, which, believe it or not, is right around the corner. Next slide, please. So on the note of kind of schedule and next steps, I wanted to take just a few minutes and talk about kind of what comes next in this process. Next slide, please. So following tonight's meeting, our team at ARG will be working on polishing up the document and getting it ready for publication. So I talked a bit before about incorporating some additional historic photos into the body of the report, so we'll be working on that. If there's any additional feedback about the revised draft, either from you or from staff or from members of the community, we would very much welcome that, and we'll do our very best to make sure that everyone's comments and feedback are incorporated into the final iteration of the document. Once everything is polished up and ready to go, the historic context statement will go before the City Council for review and approval. Matt can perhaps speak a bit more about the logistics of that and what that looks like. But as of now, it's looking like the document will be presented to City Council in September, so about a month or so from now. Next slide, please. And then finally, I just wanted to talk a bit more generally about how the historic context statement can be used in the future after it's been finalized and approved by City Council. We've talked a lot about this in previous presentations, so I don't want to belabor the point too much, but I mean, this is really meant to be a living document. It's meant to be not just sit on a shelf. We don't want it to just collect us. We want people to actually use it and for it to be meaningful really to the city or to residents and to anybody with an interest in the history of San Gabriel. So I think on that note, I mean, completion of the historic context statement is really it's something to be celebrated. It's a very important step forward in the city's historic preservation program. And it really demonstrates the city's commitment to acknowledging its history and protecting its really amazing collection of historic and cultural resources. The document in its final form will provide a very strong foundation for future planning endeavors in the city that pertain to historic and cultural preservation. I think on a very, very general and maybe less tangible level, the document will hopefully help to promote an awareness and appreciation of the city's history. A lot of times with these citywide historic context statements, we find that there is a tremendous interest among the local community about their collective history. And that sometimes it takes a document like this to really break it down and distill it down into a manageable narrative for people to really get engaged. So we are hopeful that this will get people excited about the history of the city. I think more tangibly, the document will serve a very valuable planning function moving forward. It can be consulted by planners, other decision makers who are involved in land use and planning decisions at the local level to make sure that historic and cultural resources within the city are acknowledged and appropriately managed as the city continues to grow and evolve. The document can also be consulted by everybody and anybody who wishes to prepare a landmark nomination, be that for the local register or the California Register or National Register, all of which require the development and understanding of historic context. And then last but not least, the context statement will be a critical tool for any future efforts to conduct historic resource surveys within the city. This document will provide the structure and the framework for completing surveys thoroughly and efficiently. The narrative context and eligibility standards that are included within the document will help steer attention to important property types, convey important themes that are reflected in the city's built environment, and help surveyors ultimately decide what's important and what's worthy of recognition. Speaking a little bit more, I don't want to get too far off topic, but I think oftentimes as in our line of work, context statements and surveys go hand in hand. They're not always completed at the same time. Oftentimes, like in San Gabriel, one component of that is completed before the other. So in this case, the historic context statement comes first, which is a very wise way to do things. And surveys can really take any number of forms. They can be citywide. They could focus on specific neighborhoods, particular property types, particular themes. It's really up to the city to determine what the best course of action is, given, of course, limited resources and just time and money constraints. But I think in any context, be it a citywide survey or a smaller survey, this document will hopefully be beneficial and will help steer those efforts. Next slide, please. So that concludes our presentation. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments about the revised draft. And we'll also do our very best to answer any questions that you might have about the revised document before you tonight. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so very much. I really was delighted, Andrew, reading this revision. And I want to first off acknowledge the amount of work that went into adding sections. I'm very pleased that we increased our number of contexts. That was something that was very important to me. And so thank you for the work to accomplish that. I will turn to my fellow commissioners for any questions, starting again with, or comments, starting again with Commissioner DeVrent. I don't know if we may be having audio issues.
I don't have any comments at this time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to this yet. This is,
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. Vice Chair Maharo.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Andrew, your team. It's been such a joy to read this. I've actually read it to my father. I told him I wouldn't finish reading it until I had a complete version of it, the final. He commented on so much of it. And again, I read it to him almost like a story. And I was so proud that this is the city that I live in. On a personal note, I think, then again, thank you for adding the pre-1775 context on the Tongva, on the indigenous culture here, what preceded us. There's my only comment is really, and this is a lovely, well-written report. I've really enjoyed reading this. My concern is on the section, 5, the context, San Gabriel pre-1775. The ending, the very last paragraph of that section, as I read it, it almost seemed as if its folks are no longer with us. And they very much are still with us. I would prefer that mentions some of that. I'm not sure if you actually interviewed any of the Tongva folks, but I feel like the ending to this section is not the ending of that culture of these people. They're still here. They're and we do refer to them on occasion for city development and so forth. It's just that last paragraph, I think, that I kind of was concerned with. That basically they were moved, were forced to live under, Spanish rule and kind of uprooted and lost their traditions. And I don't think that's necessarily, I mean, it is what happened. We know that's what happened, but there are still Tongva here in the Southland that are still trying to keep their traditions. So again, that's my only comment. Other than that, I truly, truly enjoyed reading this, and I appreciate all the effort and all the work and all the research that went into writing this. And again, I thank you for that.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you very much for those comments. So we will certainly go back and revisit that last paragraph. I agree that it is important to really acknowledge the ongoing contributions of the Native population, and that's, looking back, that's something that didn't come through as clearly as it should have. So we'll definitely make an effort to improve that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Urena.
I just kind of want to piggyback on the last statement as well. I read it the first time. I thought it was great. I couldn't stop reading it. I'm probably 3/4 of the way of the new one. I really do appreciate all the extra photos. Gives you more spots to go, sightseeing. I like I said, to piggyback on the last comment, when I did get to the end of that chapter, it did kind of stump me for a second, right? Where it just kind of seems like it's just the indigenous population here is just kind of silent, and no longer available for comment or something, which we all know isn't necessarily true. Because I even read most of this to my son, and he was like, "Well, what happened to them?" He's like, "What happened to them?" And I know that this is still a fluid thing, right? And there's more that we can revisit. So that's all I really have to say. Sorry.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Urena. Commissioner Weeks.
Yes. I have to say that this is a huge improvement, Andrew. Thank you for all the extra work and all the additional content that you added, specifically that early era, historical era of the development of this area, San Gabriel. I didn't really think about the comments that Commissioner Urena and Moharo brought up with regards to the indigenous people and what currently, they're still around. I was just that fact was it just opened my eyes right now listening to those comments. So I don't think it's a huge problem with the document, but it would be good to sort of formalize an ending to, or additional information to supplement that my fellow commissioners have already brought up. But the additional photographs, it was just a great read. I started to read it and I go, no, I have to go outside, get comfortable, get something cool to drink, and sit outside for a couple of hours and just whiz through this. And it was really, really wonderful to read it. So kudos to you and ARG for the work you've done so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Weeks. Andrew, I also have some comments, not nearly as many as I did on the initial draft, but I just wanted to point out, again, going sort of chronologically through the document, just a few things. in the in Gabriel pre-1775, the explanation of the different nomenclature for the indigenous populations is a wonderful improvement and clarification. I just wondered if there was a reason that the presentation of the nomenclature wasn't standardized. It alternates between Gabrielino Tongva Quiche to Tongva Gabrielino Quiche, and I wondered if it might be better to settle on one presentation of that nomenclature for consistency in the document. The historian in me wanted to follow sort of the historiographical chronology of those terms, the way that you laid it out in the document. But that was something that caught my eye. If it is an intentional movement of the names, then I would certainly make sure they all get their turn at the front of the line, just in that respect. And I'll, again, echo the comments that have been made by my fellow commissioners. The concluding paragraph does give the sense that we do not have a resilient culture of indigenous populations in San Gabriel. And I think that resilience can be drawn out in other places in the document, particularly when you're talking about the multi-ethnic neighborhoods that define San Gabriel. We have community members that can trace their lineage back 7, 8, 9, 10 generations, I think, is what I've heard from some of the people I've spoken to. They go quite a ways back. And they've been here, as Vice Chair Moharo said, the whole time. And I think that they can be represented in the discussion of those diverse communities that weren't just made up of Mexican, Japanese, Chinese, but also included our indigenous populations as well. So that was sort of a statement that might help draw out the presence of our indigenous communities throughout the document. I had a comment. I'm going to go through my turn down pages. Apologize for the pause. This is page 55. I believe this is in the early commercial development theme for 1849 to 1912. You referenced Mary Ruth Hayes, and I just wanted to make sure that you had a citation for that document. It's a history that she wrote of San Gabriel. It's unpublished, but it's in the possession and holdings of the San Gabriel Historical Association. The title of her document is The Way It Was, and it's a very sweet educational tool that I think she intended for school children about the history of San Gabriel. Let's see. There was one question I had for you, again, in a section on the commercial development. It was when you were talking about the Barrio neighborhood, and this is on page 93 in the commercial development theme for 1913 to 1930. You talked about the different pattern of commercial development that was characterized in the Barrio, and the explanation is loosely enforced or non-existent land use controls. And I wondered if that designation might be a bit off. Would they have been tighter in other parts of the city and yet looser in the Barrio? It seems to me that there's a socioeconomic factor about the community there that might be a consideration. So it just seemed a generalization that might be a bit off in terms of its explanation. And the last, two more comments for you. This is in the post-war civic institutional development, 1946 to 1980. It's page 161. And I loved in this theme that you really pointed to the shift from institutional development in terms of services to institutional development in terms of recreation during the post-war period. But wondered if it might be worth mentioning that the city voted by bond to purchase the Mission Playhouse, and that for a period of time it was the San Gabriel Civic Auditorium, just as a sign of sort of the ambitions, the bond pamphlets, which I know that the Playhouse had a nice archive of those, really are quite fantastic to read because there's such aspiration for what San Gabriel is going to be for its residents in advocating for the bond. And then the last comment I had is a Friends of La Laguna legal park correction. Benjamin Dominguez did design one last playground beyond our monster park, La Laguna de San Gabriel. He designed the Aztec slides in Plaza de la Raza. And so San Gabriel's playground is the last playground he constructed. He designed the Plaza de la Raza, but died before he could complete its construction. So if it would be helpful, I'm happy to send those comments in written form to you. But again, I just want to say that I'm so pleased. I feel that the revisions have given us a real opportunity to speak for areas of the city that have been overlooked. I'm so excited to have a better context to talk about the Barrio neighborhood, to talk about the village, to talk about our legacy businesses and our main corridors. I have to say to Jen in the presentation of the Covina Bowl, it made me miss our San Gabriel Bowl sign so much. I thought that was such a great call out, and I love the attention to the signage that this context statement gave. I'm very, very excited. I feel like we finally have something that allows us to really speak for the built environment that we have from 1913 onwards. So I'm really delighted and excited to see this context statement work its way out into the community.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your comments. And we will certainly be working to address those, and we'll be sure everybody's comments are incorporated into the final draft.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, it's time for public comment. So all public comments should be emailed to hpcrc-publiccomment@sgch.org. Secretary Ortiz, have we received any public comments on this item?
No public comment, Chair.
All right, then it is now 8:12 p.m. The time for public comment for this item is closed. Are there any final comments from my fellow commissioners? All right. Matt or Sam, do we need to take action on this item?
Yes, Chair Lupasich. I just realized on the script we should make it. We need a resolution. We need a formal voting from the commissioner. Sorry, apologize for. I just realized we need to have a motion to recommending approval to the city council. It is a resolution. So if Chair Lupasich can lead the effort.
So for my commissioners, I believe in your binders you do have a draft resolution that was prepared. And this would mean that we are recommending approval by the city council. I am happy to take a motion pending some of the final revisions that we've made tonight, that we continue this process forward. If you are looking through your big binder, this is behind, in mine at least, tab number 2, right before you get to tab 3. But I would be happy to take a motion for a resolution.
I motion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Urena. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moharo. So I believe I was the one who provided the wording for the motion. I don't know, Commissioner Urena, if you would like to adjust. But as it stands, we would be recommending approval for this to be taken to the city, or we would be recommending that this historic context statement be taken to the City Council for approval, pending the revisions noted tonight in our meeting. Secretary Ortiz, would you mind taking a roll call vote for us?
Roll call vote. Commissioner DeVrent.
Yay.
Commissioner Urena.
Yes.
Commissioner Weeks. Commissioner Weeks?
I'm sorry, I had just stepped away.
Eric, we are voting on a resolution to forward the historic context statement to City Council for approval pending the revisions that we suggested tonight.
Oh, okay, absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Maharo?
Yes.
Chair Lubisich?
Yes.
Motion passed. Vote is 5-0.
Well, again, Andrew, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to supporting this at the council meeting.
Great. Thank you all so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
This brings us to the 7th item on our agenda, the Certified Local Government, CLG application update, and the proposed zone text amendment for cleanup items to the Historic Preservation and Cultural Resource Ordinance.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Actually, there is an item 6, which is a status update on the land acknowledgement statement. So if staff can just provide a brief update on that item.
I apologize. I was scrolling down to names and missed 6. So please.
Thank you very much. Item 6 again is an update on the status of the development of the draft land acknowledgement statement. Discussions on this item first began in September of 2020. And since this item is relatively new to city staff as well as the commission, research was needed to inform next steps and processes. The commission at its November 4th, 2020 meeting expressed interest in moving forward with the project and identified Chair Lubisich and Vice Chair Maharo as subcommittee members. On June of 2021, the HERE Commission also expressed interest and support in moving forward with the project. And so on August 2021, the City Council discussed this item and approved the formation of an advisory committee to meet with the local tribal groups and to develop a draft statement. So community services staff, with the assistance of community development staff, will be coordinating efforts to agendize and notice future advisory committee meetings. And so the recommendation before the commission this evening is to provide comments or otherwise, if not, stay tuned. And there will be notification provided by community services staff on future meetings. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Sam. Are there any comments or questions for city staff or my fellow commissioners? Again, I'll go through by name. Commissioner DeVrent?
No comments at this.
Right. Vice Chair Maharo?
I actually listened in on that city council meeting where it was discussed, and I think it was well received by everyone. I look forward to being on this committee. I think it's exciting that we're going to actually do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Urena?
No comment?
Thank you, Commissioner Urena. And Commissioner Weeks?
No comments, thank you.
And I will just say that I also appreciate the update from staff and I appreciate Commissioner Maharo, Vice Chair Maharo, listening into the discussion at City Council. I'm looking forward to working with the HERE Commission and council members and the members of our local tribes, the elders and chiefs, hopefully to work towards a good expression of acknowledgement of their past and present presence in our city. So I have no questions at this time. I just look forward to seeing what the next steps are. It is time for public comment on this item. All public comments should be emailed to hpcrc-publiccomment@sgch.org. Secretary Ortiz, did we receive any public comments on this item?
No public comment for this item, Chair.
Thank you. So it is 8:19, and I will close the public comment on this item. Are there any final comments from my fellow commissioners? Seeing none, we will now move on to item 7, the Certified Local Government Application Update.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Item 7, staff is just going to provide a very brief summary. Again, Jennifer with WHA can also add in some of the details in the email exchanges and conversations. But essentially, this is another update item on the city's certified local government application with the State Office of Historic Preservation, OHP. And as shown in attachment A, Jen did assist city staff by reaching out to the Office of Historic Preservation, and their office clarified why the application has not been certified by the National Park Service and provided recommendations on how to address the concerns from the National Park Service. And also this item includes just a quick update on some code updates that staff will be initiating. One, to address the term limit provisions within the preservation ordinance for the commission. There is a little bit of inconsistency between the terms for the Historic Preservation and Cultural Resource Commission with the other city commissions. So staff will be initiating an update just to bring all the code sections into consistency amongst the different city commissions, and then also to address a quick a small typographical error in the ordinance as well. So this is an opportunity just to follow up on some code cleanup items. Again, Jennifer can speak maybe a little bit more specifically to what the state may be looking for in any updates to the city's preservation ordinance. So with that, that concludes staff's summary on this item.
Thank you very much, Sam, for that update. I will turn first to my fellow commissioners for any questions, but I would very much appreciate hearing from Jen about the change that's being requested.
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Chair Lubasich. Certainly, I'd be glad to talk about this. On Matt's request, I did reach out to Shannon with Office of Historic Preservation. I have a great working relationship, of course, with the OHP. We're in communication a lot, and I have worked with Shannon specifically. So it was, I was really excited to be able to jump in and try and help this along. And I just was able to kind of get the conversation condensed into some meaningful direction, you know, for us to move forward. I think that was just really the help that was needed here. OHP had already performed their review, and it was just a matter of getting the comments in a concise manner that we could really understand what needed to happen. So basically, the Office of Historic Preservation review revealed that we do need one change to the ordinance in order to meet the requirements for CLG status. That one required change is that we are not able to have in our ordinance that we have automatic listing in our local register when a property is listed in the National Register or the California Register. And that's something the National Park Service has implemented, and it's an absolute deal breaker. And there's a very good reason for it. It sounds sort of logical that that would be the case, and I can understand the ordinance being written that way. But the reason is because when an application is submitted for the National Register, the owner has the opportunity to object to that listing. And if an owner may agree to the listing in the National Register, say, and that also came with automatic listing in the San Gabriel Register, there's no opportunity there for the owner to object to that local listing. And a local listing does come with a different layer of regulatory triggers, you know, than that the National Register does not. So the National Park Service does not want to subject an owner to those local regulatory triggers by the National Register listing. So that's obvious and understandable, and it definitely is something that we must overcome if we want to proceed with the CLG application. There was one other recommendation that OHP made, and this is not a requirement, but a recommendation. And I have seen other cities become certified local governments without making this type of change. But I do think I agree with the recommendation, and it's simply that it will make our ordinance much more understandable and clear. And the recommendation is to differentiate between surveyed properties and designated properties a bit more clearly. We have used quite freely the term inventory throughout the preservation ordinance. A quick little search reveals 54 times we've used inventory, and sometimes it's quite appropriately used, but there's a few times where we could clean it up a bit and make, instead of inventory, say designated or surveyed. And then that would just help differentiate between the two, because a surveyed property certainly isn't automatically a designated property or even found potentially eligible for designation. So that was the recommendation from OHP, along with the required change if we want to proceed with certified local government status. And quickly in talking with Matt, we kind of outlined, and I know Sam was involved too on Matt's end, we outlined sort of a path forward that would help us get to the finish line, we hope by the end of the year, if we did want to make that required change and possibly the recommended change to the ordinance. I'm certain that I could help and assist with working with OHP and be kind of a liaison between staff and OHP to help move that along.
Thank you very much. Very helpful. So I'll turn to my commissioners again, just to see if they have any questions or comments. Commissioner DeVrent?
No questions or comments at this time.
Vice Chair Moharo?
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner Urena?
No comments, thank you.
And Commissioner Weeks?
No comments.
Jen, I do have one question about the required change. Would that mean that a local property needs its own separate process in designation, or is it just a matter of a separate hearing at the local level? I mean, meaning if you've prepared something for a national register, do you then have to have a separate approval process at the local level, or would just a hearing of what you prepared at the national, if that were the case, suffice?
Yeah, it depends on how the preservation ordinance is laid out. And I'm getting up to speed with the city of San Gabriel, so forgive me if I don't know all the answers, but I don't think that we have outlined a application process. So it's possible that you could move forward with a public hearing and use the National Register nomination as a basis for establishing significance, and have a document that the commission could review to determine if they concur with that finding. Cities do it differently everywhere. Some have their own separate applications, some require DPR forms. The National Register nomination form does not require DPR forms. So it's really up to San Gabriel to decide. But yes, you would need a separate local hearing in order to establish local designation.
Thank you very much for that clarification. It is now time for public comment on this item. All public comments should be emailed to hpcrc-comments@sgch.org. Secretary Ortiz, did we receive any comments on this item?
No, Chair, no public comment for this item.
Thank you. So it is now 8:28 p.m. and the time for public comment on this item is closed. Are there any further comments from the commission? All right, so that brings us to item 8, staff items.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission, the only item from staff would be, if you notice on the agenda, the adjournment date is the regularly scheduled meeting for the Preservation Commission is September 8th, which is just around the corner. At this time, staff does not have items set up for that meeting, that date. And also that particular week, the Community Services Department was looking at that week to maybe potentially start looking at dates for the advisory committee for the land acknowledgement statement development. So at this time, it is up to the commission whether to keep the date or, if not, to adjourn to the next regularly scheduled meeting for the historic preservation. And then, Matt, I don't know if we have the date for that next meeting.
Yes, this is a senior planner Matt Chen speaking. The next regular hearing day after September will be December 8th, which is the second Wednesday of December. Of course, with any meeting that if there's some item that requires commission attention, we can always have a special meeting with concurrence, the availability of the commissioners, also staff members. But the next regular meeting after September will be December 8th.
Thank you. I look forward to getting the work group together in the interim on the land acknowledgement statement. Is there anything further from staff?
No other updates.
Thank you. So this brings us to commissioner comments and conference meeting reports. Each commissioner is welcome and invited to address the commission on matters of general information and or concern. This is also the time for commissioners to report on conferences and or meetings that they have attended. So again, going by name, Commissioner DeVrent, any report?
I have no comments or reports at this time.
Thank you. Vice Chair Mahara?
No comment. Thank you.
Commissioner Urena?
No comments or reports at this time.
Commissioner Weeks?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
I just had a few things I wanted to share with my fellow commissioners. Tomorrow, if you have nothing going on your day on Thursday, California Preservation Foundation is having an all-day workshop on the Secretary of the Interior standards, which if you've been listening to all of the references, they often show up in code. Sometimes we say SOI or Section 106, but they really are the rules of the game when it comes to preservation. CPF does really wonderful presentations. If you aren't able to attend live, they are recording the event. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that opportunity for professional development, if nothing else. Just a lot of really wonderful, good information from knowledgeable people. So that's tomorrow. The California Preservation Foundation, if you go to their website, has a link to register. I also wanted to point out that on Friday, the critical mission studies that is hosted through the UCs, I think it is housed at UC San Diego, is having another conference. It begins, I think, at 1 o'clock on Friday to 5:30, and it's just going to be live streamed. If you go to, I believe it's on the OHP, the Office of Historic Preservation site as an upcoming event. And I'm happy to send this information on to Matt so he can share it out with all of you if you would like the links. But it's a really good look at the indigenous, it's bringing the indigenous voices to the story of the California missions, which is certainly something for us to be listening to. I also wanted to make my fellow commissioners and community aware that the San Gabriel Historical Association is trying to work its way out of pandemic mode. They are trying to begin building back some of their events and community support. And so taking a look at their website and seeing what's coming up, they are an incredibly valuable archive and resource to us, a wealth of knowledge in artifact and people. And so I know they would be grateful for our support in building bridges between the commission and their works over at the association. And then the last thing I wanted to raise for staff, I don't know how long it's been since we gave Bell Awards. It was, I think, a biannual preservation award that we had for the city. But as I've been watching some of the projects and things that are happening in San Gabriel, I will always be an advocate for using May to bring attention to preservation in San Gabriel. And I would love to see the Bell Awards come back. I do encourage my other fellow commissioners to go down and do the scavenger hunt at the Playhouse and look for where they've been testing paint. And when you're there, peek into the Blossom Market Hall. I was looking through the windows because I'm so eager for it to open, period. But I was also very curious to see what they had done with the former Masonic Lodge and was delighted to see some of the details of the history of the building that they were able to keep. And I'm so excited to get to walk around and see what they've done upstairs and in other areas of the Masonic Lodge. And then go grab a Nomad's Ice Pop because it's refreshing. We've got some hot days ahead. But I would love to be able to bring back adaptive reuse as an award and works in preservation for the city. People have done outstanding work in preservation. So if staff might be willing to look into the different criteria we had for the Bell Award and what it might entail to bring that back, I would be delighted to see us bring that to the city in May of 2022. And that is the reports and comments that I had. And with that, I think we are finally at our adjournment. It sounds like we will be adjourning to the regular meeting of the Historic Preservation and Cultural Resource Commission on December 8th at 6:30 p.m. I would be delighted if it's actually at City Hall and not online. It is 8:35, and I will thank everyone for their time and work tonight. Thanks all.